Buongiorno a tutti. Thank you very much for having me here. And I'm really happy to share what we have been doing in Wisconsin and try to look at the future in regards to the dairy farm industry. So, as you can see in the title there, at the very end is AI, artificial intelligence. I do think we are living at the moment a revolution in many industries. All have heard about ChatGPT, BART, and all those new developments in AI, but there are many more, and I think that's pervading as well in the dairy industry. And I do think, truly think, that we are living at the moment, we are not realizing as much, but the dairy industry is going to change, as many other agricultural industries, the way how it operates. And I do think those who are at the forefront and take advantage of the information available nowadays are going to be the ones who are going to be on top on the industry. So this is the moment to jump into the train that's going to change how the industry works. So before I continue, I would like to give you a little bit about myself because I want to very clearly portray what I do and what I don't do. Okay, so I'm a professor and at the same time extension dairy specialist in management in general in dairy farm. And I'm here, I'm very happy to be here doing a sabbatical at the Catholic University in Piacenza. I'm collaborating with Antonio Gallo, that you have seen previously in the talks, Francesco Massoero, who is with us as well, and with Dr. Andrea Berlingueri, who was the one who started all this collaboration. He spent some time in my lab in Wisconsin a few years back. And I'm also collaborating with other groups in Italy that you will see in a moment. So my main work is applied research, and that means that I combine research with extension, and I try to be very alert to what the industry is requiring, what the farmers want. I try to give that back, and my work actually combines what my other colleagues and myself do as applied as basic research, like for example, in the area of reproduction, in the area of nutrition, in the area of genetics, for example, and we put together these decision support tools using simulation modeling, optimization, in order to help farmers to make better decisions and better management. And we call that data-driven management decisions. I run two websites. One is the dairymgt.info, dairy management information. And if you search that online in Google, it will be at the top of the results. I invite you cordially to visit and actually explore all the information available there, including all these decision support tools in different management areas of dairy management. From the last 5 years, I have been leading, luckily as well, this very large project that we call the Dairy Brain. And there is a website as well about that, dairybrain.wisc.edu. And I'm going to give you a little more detail about the Dairy Brain and how this connects with the future on the dairy industry. Okay? This is the main concept of the Dairy Brain, what you can see in, in, the, in the main screen here. In the center, the main brain of a cow that is trying to make better decisions in dairy farming, okay? And in order to do that, we need to convert the data into information that will finally end up in better decisions, better management on the farm. But one thing that I think is very important to realize in this ongoing process is that this needs to be done on a permanent way, in a continuous way. That means actually we are talking here about data in motion, which is different than what we normally do in research, data at rest. We normally collect the data, we analyze, and we publish very nice papers that are very good to improve the industry. Here we are trying to do that, but in a continuous basis. So farmers can adapt to the new times and we can take advantage of the new technologies available not only in the algorithms, AI, machine learning, but also take advantage of the new technologies to integrate data. And you will see a big part of this project becomes the fact of getting different sources of data, different what we call streams or pipelines of data in dairy farms connected in real time to improve decision making. And throughout the years, we have been working for this for about 5 years now, a little more maybe. Uh, the main bottleneck of the whole process has been the data integration on the dairy farms. We all know, and I'm pretty sure everybody will agree with me, that we have silos of data on dairy farms that they don't talk to each other. We have the feeding system on one side, we have the milking parlor on the other side, we have the sensor system on the other side. Everyone by themselves is very good, works for their own purpose, but they don't work together. Our vision here is, and we are proving that, and you will see some proofs of that now, next, is that if we connect all those data in real time, our decision will improve even greater. So in this example, in the screen, you have, for example, feed, milking parlor, and management data that need to be collected. Each one will require a specific system to extract the data in an efficient way as soon as the data are being generated on the farm. Then we need to decode the data, we need to clean the data. We all know the data in dairy farms is very messy. There is a lot of missing data, a lot of duplicated data, outliers, etc. We need to deal with that in an automatic and systematic way. We need to homogenize the data and finally integrate, connect the data so we can use the data. And as I was saying, this is a very important part, and I think we all, as an industry, we need to work more towards this new era of AI and machine learning. And because of that, for example, in this case, this work gets so involved that we needed to publish a paper of our old process, hopefully to motivate other groups to do exactly the same in other parts of the industry. Once we have the data, we need to use the data in the most efficient way. So we have different levels in which we can use this data, as you can see here, to create these decision support tools. Some of those will be, from the standpoint of view of the algorithms or calculation, relatively simple, but it's still very important, like descriptive tools. Like we all know about these benchmarking tools or dashboards that will show the current situation of the farm. Then we will have the next level, more advanced. Maybe at that point we will need to use machine learning, predictive algorithms to predict the future performance of the farm. So we can anticipate how we can better address those. We can predict if potentially cows will get sick for some reason, and we can do something ahead of time. And the top level, in our opinion, of this decision support tool are the prescriptive ones. Those are the ones in which, on top of all that, we put some level of optimization, in which we can actually suggest to the farmer or to the decision maker which could be the best course of action that will give the best outcome, whether it is economic outcome mostly, or maybe economic combined with the environmental outcome, but that will depend on the situation and will depend on the goals of the manager. Once we do that, we are adding value to the data. We are converting the data into information and actionable items that will change the way farms operate. And here's a simple example, but in my opinion, very telling. Okay? This is a specific farm in Wisconsin. Okay? And we want to provide a descriptive decision support tool that will calculate two things. In bottom there, the feed efficiency, and on the top, income or feed cost. Okay? But in order to do so, with the concept and the vision to do it on a permanent basis, in an ongoing basis, we will need all this architecture of algorithms that will collect the data and put the data at the right time in the right system. So for example, we will need the milk amount produced. And in order to do so, we will collect the milk from the milking parlor. In this case, the farm uses this software that's called Smart Dairy, and that's from Bowmatic system. It could be any system, actually. And but we need to collect every single milking, and we need to aggregate, for example, at the level of every single day. And on the other side, we will need to use another software that will bring the feed data. In this case, is TMR tracker. It could be any software again. And the feed tracker, TMR tracker will give us the feed amount, and we need to connect the feed amount that's being consumed in every pen, because normally we feed cows in pens, and so we can connect which cows were milked at what time from which pen, and we can actually calculate the milk amount by the feed amount being consumed, and we can have the feed efficiency. And many of here are farmers or people heavily involved with the dairy industry, and you know you can calculate this manually. Yes, we all have done that, but here the challenge is to have that key performance indicator every single time I want. It should be at my fingertips, and I can show the evolution, and I can make change when this is moving in the direction I don't want, right? On top of that, if I want to calculate the milk income or feed cost, that very simple is the milk value minus the feed cost. I will require on top of that the dollar value of the milk, and that will require the feed components I'm producing on the milk. So in this case, for example, we will put and need the information from Grande. Grande is a cheese plant, actually, with a lot of roots in Italy, and it does Italian cheeses for a lot of pizzerias in the US. And they have actually a fee schedule, how they pay the farmers. So we need to actually recalculate and follow their own way of calculating the price of milk according to the feed component, somatic cell count, and we do that on a permanent basis every time a milk tank leaves the farm. And we need that connect with which cows were the ones that produced the milk. And we can calculate what is the milk value that has been produced in a day, for example, or every load of milk could be. And we need to connect that with the feed amount and the feed value, right? And then there is another software I mentioned, TMR tracker, that will have the amount of feeds. We will have all the list of the feeds and their value, and I can calculate every single diet for every single group of animals, how much the diet has been, and I can connect to and have the income or feed cost. Once again, the challenge here is not the algorithms to calculate this. The challenge here are the algorithms to get the data at the right time, at the right place. One additional thing in this diagram is the USDA prices. Okay, in order to calculate the feed, the milk value, we actually need the baseline prices from the USDA in the US. Okay, and those are available online. If I have an algorithm to collect those data, it's very efficient. And I mention this because they use one thing that's called APIs, application programming interfaces. And that's the future, actually. In order to share data, it would be much easier if every single company, like Grande Company, Smart Dairy, or TMR Tracker, or DairyComp, would provide us or anyone APIs so we can consume the data the time we need in the way we need. And I think that's going to happen, and we need to be at the forefront of that. Here's an example. This is a farm. I cannot disclose the name of the farm, and this is very recent. This happens every single day. The farm will have this information. This is the time when I provide the presentation here. And I can calculate and have all this information from different systems of the farm online, and the farm can log in a place and get this. You can see in the bottom right here, for example, the average income or feed cost per cow for the month of August, on the time that August was almost at the end there, and how that compares with the previous month. And I can have that information every single day and know what I could potentially do to change that if there is something going on the farm. Same thing, I can have a lot of other production KPIs, key production production indices. Like for example, the feed efficiency, once again, on the bottom right there, the feed efficiency is 1.74, and it says here is 0.27% lower than the last month, even though the income or feed cost was greater. So the farmer can analyze and say, what has changed from last month to this month, or this day to this day, and what I can do to keep going in the most efficient way. If I do that, I can follow actually across time what's the feed efficiency changing month by month. You can see here the blue line is this year, and it's doing better than last year in feed efficiency, even though the income or feed cost is lower because prices hasn't been that good as last year, for example. But the farmer is performing better, and that's important for them to know. And then we can see the income or feed cost month by month, how much money are making per cow. And I can see this even at the cow level or the pen level on the farm, the level that the farmer will require and wanted to see actually. So what's the take-home message of this part? I think this is possible. I think this is something that is in the minds of many of who are right now listening. But the problem is that there is not a clear system in which how we can provide that. And I think if we all work together, we should be able to have this in the fingertips of the farmers, and they can do much better decisions regarding their income or feed cost, feed efficiency, and related key performance indicators. So now let's go at a little higher level of decision making, improving nutritional accuracy. So there are a couple of papers if anyone wants more detail about that. And this is the work of a former student in my lab, Jorge Barrientos. And you can see there, the main idea was to provide an automatic system of decision making to improve nutritional accuracy in a farm as an example, as a proof of concept. And this actually can only be done if we have different data sources collected in one place, and we have an algorithm that will provide the best actions from the standpoint of view of the decision making. We can facilitate nutritional grouping that we think in many ways will help to do more accurate nutritional decisions on the farm. Okay? One important thing is we know the farm, we work with the farmer and the management, and we want to do as little as possible disruptions on the current management. So we want to work on the management the farm is doing. We are going to do tweaks that will make a difference in the decision making and the nutritional accuracy. So this is a large farm, about 2,400 lactating cows located in Wisconsin. It has 14 pens. Each one of the pens has a capacity of about 160 cows, and they provide 9 diets to all those 14 pens. So that means that some of the pens, even though they are large, they receive exactly the same diet. They use NDS diet formulation software. I know that's also popular here. And the other thing that's important in this farm, diets are reformulated only a few times a year when they buy big quantities of feed. Okay? So that's important because in this farm, the diet is assigned to the pen, not to the cows. No matter what cows end on that pen, they know these are, for example, the primiparous peak lactation, they have a diet. And in our opinion, there is an opportunity there to improve that because the cows production, the cows group will be changing, and should we tweaking the diets a little bit to improve that, okay? They have electronic gates in order to move the cows, and they move the cows every week. They reassign cows. They don't move all the cows, but some cows move from one pen to another, and they need to make a space to move the cows to another pen from that pen out, okay? But this requires data integration in real time, as I was mentioned before. In this case, two main data sources, Dairycom 305. I know you are familiar as well with Dairycom 305. And in this case, FeedComp, which is the feed software that actually, interestingly and ironically, it comes from the same company, Valley Agricultural Software, but the two software don't talk to each other. So we need to make the connection between the two software. This farm used NDS, as I mentioned before, but in order to do all an integrated solution system, Jorge also created a diet formulation system within the whole decision making. So it will provide an alternative diet to the results. Okay? And here is the main concept of we are proposing in this farm. And this is an example only with the pig primiparous cows, that in which there are about 480 cows that are split in 3 groups, each one of 160 cows about. Okay? At the moment, they don't distinguish the diet for each one of these pens. They give just one diet to all the pig primiparous cows, and the diet level of density about energy and metabolizable protein, it is about the solid black dot in the figure there. But we all know there are cows that require a lot of energy and a lot of metabolizable protein, much more than those that require much less of energy and protein, right? So if we do a cluster, I know Antonio has been talking about cluster as well, and we can group animals that are lower requirement and those that are higher requirement and those that are in between, like for example 3 groups. We could do more groups actually, but because we have 3 pens, we do 3 groups, and then we can tweak the diets, and we will require instead 1 diet, 3 diets. And out of those 3 diets, one of the diets probably will require a higher density diet, but very likely, or no, for sure, the other 2 diets will have a much lower density requirements. If we aggregate the 3 diets instead of the 1 diet, we will be using much less nutrients. The diets will be less costly, we will be saving money, and even though we believe that will improve in productivity, we don't have enough data at the moment to quantify that. But just the savings on the feed is a big impact on the farm, as you will see. And here I know there is a lot of data, but let me walk you through this. And let's just concentrate in the pens at the bottom, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? The graphs on the top are actually for the multiparous, and the bottom from the primiparous. And on the left side of the graphs, we have the current practice, what they are doing, and on the right, the proposed practice that we are doing with the analysis. Okay? If we look only to the pens 3, 4, and 5, peak of primiparous cows, you can see that the energy in red or the protein, metabolizable protein in blue, they are giving right now, as I was mentioning before, just 1 diet to the 3 groups, right? Our proposal is very simple. On the right, we do a little tweak and we have 3 diets respect to energy and protein, and we could put other nutrients as well there, obviously, okay? And that will result still in providing enough nutrients to those animals and saving money, as I was mentioning before, okay? And this will happen across in all the different groups of animals, obviously. And actually, if we look at this with dollar values and actually using data from the farm from several years and projecting to the future as well, the current practice for the peak lactation of primiparous and peak lactation of multiparous, you can see the price there, and you can see what the proposed practice price of the diet would be. And we can see the differences, and if we look at the bottom line here, the overall gain doing this, it will be more than $200 per cow per year. And we're talking only here about the peak lactation cows. In this farm, about 1,000 cows almost, okay? And we need to consider, on top of that, that diets are reformulated only a few times a year. If the diets are reformulated more frequently, the gain would be much higher. And actually, we show that. It's not in the publication, but we show that, and we are discussing that with the farmer. The milk is assumed to be constant across this. We have enough evidence to believe that the production could improve because we are, in the long term, because we are providing diets that are much closer to what the cows require. In the US, and probably you know this, a big problem is the overcondition of the cows because these diets go until late in lactation, very dense, very hot diets, and so there is a lot of metabolic problems in the next lactation, which would be avoided doing this kind of thing. And that obviously will have an impact on improved health as well, that hasn't been economically quantified here, but would be an important gain. And if we put the environmental side, we are saving feeds, and these feeds are providing less nitrogen in this case. So environmentally, we are more sustainable because we are excreting less nitrogen to the environment with these diets. So what's the take-home message here? That small tweaks, if we use the right data available on the farm in an integrated fashion, I think a key message I want to portray today is if the data is integrated in real time and we can actually calculate this, in this case, the calculation requires some more advanced algorithms, if you see in the paper, specifically a lot of clustering to put the cows in the right groups. But those are available there. Those are not the big problem. The big problem is to get the data and change the minds in which we can do this kind of thing, and we can really, really improve the way we are operating in dairy farms. The other thing we can do if we have the right data or the right time and integrate it, we can predict diseases, like in this case, for example, mastitis. And this is the work of Liliana and Hector a couple of years ago. And this is data, I should mention, from one farm. Okay, that's important in this case. So there is not a large data set that could be used and should be used. It's a farm, okay, with a lot of data for several years. And doing this, we can try to predict the long term, in this case we call long term, the next lactation or the first lactation indeed, if a cow will have a risk, or what's the risk of a cow of becoming mastitis infected. And the short term is a few days before, using data from the lactation mostly, what's the risk of a cow to become mastitis infected in the next few days, the onset of mastitis. So we have the long-term first lactation, and we need to integrate data. In this case, it's data of management, DHI, which is the control that happens every month, and genetics for the case of the long-term. For the continuous prediction, every single milking, we use management data, as you can see there, several parameters, and the milking parlor data. That's very important in this case. Like, for example, what is the conductivity, the temperature, and production changes every single milking. Another data point that would be important, and we didn't have in this case, would be the milk flow. The speed of flow of the velocity of the milking will also apparently influence the mastitis onset. Okay? We put all this together with the concept I mentioned before, and just to the final bottom line, we ended up with about 72% of accuracy, putting together the sensitivity and the specificity of predicting both the long-term clinical mastitis risk and the short-term, the onset of mastitis. Okay? Anyone can say here that's relatively low for a machine learning algorithm to do that. Yes, I would agree. But I should also mention this is one farm, and the idea of this is a continuous basis. So if we put this in practice in a farm, the prediction keep improving and improving with time, because we will have more data. We know machine learning work as more data we would have. So the idea is in a farm to put a system like this and keep improving the prediction. And I mean, the farmer could do decisions based on that. Actually, based on that, the farmer could say how much sensitive or specificity I want in the final decision, how much I'm willing to actually deal with false positives or false negatives on the farm. Okay? This is another interesting thing we can do with integrated data. And here I'm talking about automatic milking systems that I know are much more predominant here than in the US. Okay? So using automatic milking system to actually find out the affinity between cows. That's, I think, a very interesting concept. And the other thing I want to mention here is that this is a preliminary investigation. So that means that actually more research is required on this. But I think it's very important because the hypothesis we are following here is what happens if the affinities that first we need to detect among cows, if those are broken, how that would affect the productivity of the animals. Okay? So this is what we did. And this becomes very complex from the standpoint of view of the algorithms, but we don't need to worry about that. Those are available out there, okay? You can see this is one automatic milk system in the circle there. And the numbers are the number of the cows, the IDs. And you can see the lines that indicate how much affinity exists between one cow and the other cow. And how we measure that? By the distance of a cow passing through an electronic gate and the next cow passing through the electronic gate throughout a full year. So that's why it becomes very complex, okay? And then we measure how that affects the production and the productivity of the animals. And on the right, you can see in the figure there, one thing we detect very strongly is the variability in the milk productivity from one milking to the next. And you can see in the left side of that diagram, without social affinity, much more variability, and with social affinity, if they remain with the social affinity, the variability of the production was smaller. So we have strong evidence to demonstrate that if they lose the affinity, likely they will have more variability in the milk production. But the other thing we also encountered was that because we have all this data, we can predict very well the lactation curves of every single animal using the whole herd data and the individual animal history. And we can actually predict if the milk production is increasing, decreasing, or maintaining. And we can correlate that with the affinity. Like, for example, if you see the last graph there on the right bottom corner, you can see the dots, which are the actual data, are decreasing, while the milk production should be higher than that. And we correlate that with the affinity, and if that what's happening because they lost the affinity. And indeed they did, okay? In all the cases, we use 4 automatic milking systems. In all the 4 automatic milking systems, there was a numerical difference. Those that lose the affinity had less production. But only in one of them was a statistically significant difference. So we still need additional research, but I think it's a very interesting area in which we can use the concept of integrating data, not only in this case of the automatic milking system, but other data that we have in the farm to make better decisions. In this case, in the area of behavior of the animals. Okay? This is very briefly. I just want to give you a glimpse of other research. This is the work of a postdoc in my lab, published last year. And the main idea here was, can we predict lactation curves early on a newborn animal? I have a calf. Can I predict using my own parameters of my own farm, what would be the production of this animal during the first lactation? Okay, and in this case, actually, from the standpoint of view of the algorithms, it becomes very complex. Fan work on this, what he called the KRS architecture, which is K-medoids, so a type of clustering, random forest, and on top of that, support vector regression, in order to predict every single point of a full lactation curve of an animal. Okay, and this has been published for those of you who want to look more closely. And the bottom line is, in these figures, it's demonstrated that using this machine learning sophisticated architecture, we can predict much better of what we would have basically the right now what is the gold standard, the mean paternal siblings. Okay, genetically, what people use is what are all the paternal siblings, and the average of that, what would be what I would expect from this animal. In this case, we put on top of that the farm own parameters, and we can improve prediction significantly. So this is important. In this case, we don't have a direct use of this, but when we have decision support tools, we need these kind of predictions to make much better decisions. Like in this case, for example, the work of Manfei that has been published last year as well, and we use about more than 10 million of lactation curves in the US. Probably this is the largest study using data from the CDCB, which is the Council of Dairy Cattle Production, Breeding in the US. And using this, we fit every single lactation curve. So we fit the data to the function of the lactation curves. And based on that, actually, we can predict what's going to be the lactation curve of a first lactation, milking 2 times or milking 3 times at a specific year, in a specific month, in a specific region. So we did all across the US. This is unfortunately only for the US. And based when was the age at the first calving of the animal. So what's the bottom line of this? The bottom line on this part, in my opinion, is this can be done. This is very important because once we want to predict and use to make decision making, these lactation curves, at least the baselines, are going to be very important for that next step. As, for example, the work that Yijing is doing in my lab currently. And the idea of this work is use reproduction, genetics, and culling together, which are, we all know, they are very difficult decisions on dairy farms, right? But put all them together and use a very sophisticated model that's not on my lab, but is all across the US. That's called the ruminant farm system model. Some of you may have heard about that. So we have the decisions we put in the model, and we try to find out what's going to be the results. And actually, what Yijing is doing is using different type of semen on different groups of animals. For example, sex semen, beef semen, and the traditional conventional semen, and find out what would be the net revenue on the herd. Okay? For example, we're not going to go into the details here. I just mentioned that this has been published in the latest ADSA meeting, but I can just tell you the most aggressive, which is in the bottom in the figure, H2C2, the most aggressive reproductive program, was the one that provided the highest net revenue using a good quantity of sex semen and beef semen. Okay? If you can see on the bottom, on the top there on the table. But the important thing, and I think different here, is the next part. Because the other thing that we are doing in this research is we are following in each one of these breeding strategies what's going to be the actually genetic progress of each one of these protocols of breeding. And you can see once again here, actually, for either the heifers or the cows, which one is going to progress more rapidly. In the figure, you can see the very top line there is the top sire, how it progresses genetically, and how close to that follow the cows and the heifers. As we know, the heifers will have always better genetics than the cows. And as we improve the generational interval and the selection intensity, as we are doing with using different type of semen, we will improve faster that. So it's not only the economics on one side I show you in the previous slide, it's also the genetic progress that will translate, obviously, in economics at the very end. And this is the last thing I'm going to finish up here. I know Ricardo is looking at me very closely. I try not to look at him. and this is very interesting because, and I want to share this because this is the collaboration we are working now with the Católica University. And this started, as I mentioned before, with a collaboration with Francesco Massoero and Antonio Gallo and Andrea Bellingeri, the picture is there, who went to my lab, and we did a couple of papers that are published, and this one is specifically important because in this case is the optimal allocation of nutritional resources in a dairy herd. And the innovative part here is of the work of Andrea is that is not only producing the best diets, but it's producing the best diets with the best crop plan in the field. That's important, I understand, here for Italy conditions, mostly North Italy. Okay, so that was a very interesting work, and that's published. But we wanted, and here are some results of that. You can see on the bottom figures, on the left side, what the farmer is doing, and on the right side, what I mentioned before, this is a prescriptive work. What would be the best way to put your crops this year in a field, improve your corn silage, or change the market fields in the farm in order to improve your profitability at the very end. Okay, and based on this group, in this work actually, Andrea was able to cluster to find out 4 different types of farms which are represented here by clusters. And each one of the clusters would have a different kind of recommendation or prescription of what would be the best crops and the best diets to be more efficient on the farm. But we wanted to follow up in this work. And this is a large collaboration. You can see all the people involved there, including University of Sassari in Sardinia. And what's missing out of this work that we still need to address? We need to address multi-year crop planning. In the previous work, we were working on 1 year crop planning, and we know that's not real because farmers will plant several years of work. We know alfalfa will go for 4 years in the field, for example. And now we need to address the new European CAP rules of rotation of crops that just came up this year, I believe. We need to address enteric greenhouse gas emissions that were not addressed in the previous work. And now Yijing is leading in the optimization part and creating this integer linear programming to actually find out the best crop rotations and the best diets to improve farm, but looking at several years. Like for example, 5 years here in the figure, you can see year 1 and year 5, and the color, different colors mean different fields, different crops in the field. Okay, so without going in the details because of the time constraint here, I can tell you during the 5 years, the maximum net return optimized could be 6.12 million for this 540 cow, 300 hectare northern Italian farm. And the enteric methane production total would be 594 tons. Now we can do a multi-objective optimization and limit, for example, constrain the methane to only be 568. We will be reducing almost 10%, for example, the methane production. But in this case, our net return will be decreased to 575 million. So we're working on this. This is an ongoing project, and the idea is to fine-tune the best way to maximize the net return and minimize the methane emission. Just conclusion, very last slide here. I think it's important we keep in mind, if you want to keep only one message out of this talk, is real-time data integration is king. And I think this is the way we're going to work in the future. We need that in order to use all this sophisticated AI, machine learning stuff. And I think we can effectively improve decision making using those. One thing I didn't mention, I would like to touch very briefly here in the conclusion is, if you haven't seen actually, there are already initiatives using already ChatGPT or BART, which are these AI language large models, connected to systems in dairy farms to work. The point I'm trying to make here in the very last bullet point is that yes, we can create our own algorithms, but also we can take advantage of what's out there already available. And I think that's going to be the future of the dairy industry. Thank you.